Seventh-day Adventist pioneers have always been supportive of women in ministry. And by this we meant all kinds of ministry: evangelism, preaching to congregations, doing directors of various activities, being involved in colporteur ministry, whatever it is. Adventist pioneers were in favor of women in ministry. A little anecdote happened to Ellen White in March of 1880. She was in Northern California near Oakland having a series of evangelistic meetings, or she helped during those meetings. And one evening she was speaking to a large congregation in a tent. And before she got up to speak, somebody was circulating a note through the congregation. And the note had to do with what do you do with the text of Scripture that says that women are not allowed to speak in church? And the note came, and finally it got to the desk. And those on the desk on the platform saw the note, and Stephen Haskell was there on the platform with Ellen White. And so he received the note, read it, and before Ellen White spoke, went to the desk, the pulpit, and responded to the note. Now we don't know, we're not told what text of Scripture was referred to on this note. In this note, it was likely 1 Corinthians 14 or 1 Timothy 2, one of those two major texts regarding women not being allowed to speak. But what Haskell basically said was that Adventist pioneers, Adventists up to then, had looked at these texts as being part of a cultural set of circumstances that Paul was addressing, and that these texts were not to be applied universally to all church situations and to all women. Adventist pioneers believed, Haskell among them, that this was to do with something that was local in Paul's time. Now, we find this anecdote because Ellen White referred to it in a letter she wrote to her husband the next day. April 1st, 1880, she writes this letter to James. She makes reference to this series of meetings, she's speaking at a particular meeting, and about this note that came forward and that Haskell referred to and responded to. Well, what is interesting is in the letter that she writes to James, she basically says that she agreed with Haskell's interpretation of the text, and that therefore these texts of Paul did not hinder her from speaking to a large congregation. That I find fascinating as a little anecdote there, that our early pioneers did not see these passages of Scripture as hindering women in ministry.